I give it to number 1. That place goes to number 2.
I think it's only these that we have now. After these are gone, I can't see the younger generation getting into this type of competition, really. Firstly, it's time wasting. Secondly, it's expensive. I mean, it cannot be sustained. I mean, if you are looking at your budget properly, you cannot be misusing your hard-earned cash. It's not worth it.
The documentary Dress Like Kings gives us a glimpse of the South African subculture for men, where they wear the finest clothes each week to win the title of Best Dressed. Welcome back to Arise on Screen. I'm Mike Sargent. I'm pleased to welcome the woman behind the film, filmmaker and director, Stacey Holman. Stacey, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let me ask you, tell me a little bit, how did you find out about this? It's called a Swenko.
Oh, Swenka, yes.
Yes, now how did you find out about this and what made you want to do a documentary about it?
I read an article in the New York Times, and because it was a positive story about South Africa, it wasn't like on the front page. It was kind of tucked in between the pages. And the story spoke to me about just how these men, though they would be called maybe blue-collar workers, but they're probably like a step below blue-collar workers,
okay,
would just take time, a year, to raise money to buy these suits. And they're migrant workers, they're construction guys, and their jobs don't constitute them to actually wear suits. So I just was like drawn to that, and it just worked out perfectly because I got an unexpected amount of money, totally a blessing, and I was able to do an exploratory trip to South Africa. And once I met the guys, I just fell in love. And once I went to the hostel where they actually perform, which are this little kind of hole-in-the-wall space, it just made me fall even more in love with them.
Well, I thought it was fascinating. Tell me a little bit now, where are you at with the film right now?
Right now, we are at that last stretch, but for filmmakers, that stretch can be very long.
That I know.
So we are finished shooting in South Africa. I have 2 more interviews that are set to be done here in New York, and we're just raising the remaining funds to doing music. We have Guapale that we've spoken to do some of the soundtrack, because she's part South African, and then just do some other archival material, getting funds for that, and then just doing the onlining and the color correction and the mix and the sound. So very soon I'll be done.
So tell me a little bit about your career and you as a female filmmaker. What are some of the obstacles you face just as a female filmmaker trying to get a film made?
The main issue, I think, for a lot of filmmakers is just, and this is just not exclusive for women, but it's just the financing. It's challenging, it's hard. I can speak directly for Dress Like Kings. It's my cachet into the doc world. I was doing a lot of narratives, short narratives, and the story, just loved it so much and wanted to tell the story. Now, I'm not doing a story about some guys in Kansas, but I decided to go to South Africa, so it was like really challenging there. And I think too, the other thing is, as a female director and going to South Africa, the challenge was, here I am raising money as an American, but yet
Sure.
I have a South African crew, but they're like, okay, but we need more South Africa. Then I come here, and it's like, well, we need to have the American angle of it. But in addition to that, I think just really kind of you have an extra push yourself in terms of showing yourself what you can do, that you can really wear many titles, which a lot of my counterparts have to do. You're not just a director, you're a producer. You can also, if you need to, hold a boom pole if you need to.
Sure.
So you really have to wear many hats. So I think just as an African-American filmmaker and as a female, you just have to really do more than just, say, action or cuts.
I can, again, relate to that. And let me ask you, as an African-American female filmmaker, are there certain stumbling blocks that you think are unique to that in terms of what you and some of your colleagues have faced?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is storytelling, in terms of the stories that you want to tell. If it's African-American cast, you may be kind of like, well, where's this kind of drama? We need to have like the brother that's struck out in crack. We need to have the sister that's this. Or if you want to tell a story that's just not a predominantly black cast. I think sometimes people put you in a pigeonhole thinking that this is the stories that you're supposed to tell. And, that's not the kind of storyteller that I am. That's not the director I am. There are directors who do that, and that's great. There's a place for that. But for me, that's not me. That's not the stories I tell. And for my other colleagues, the same. Those who are actually directors and those who are actually cinematographers, too.
Now, just briefly, I want to talk about the celluloid report. Did those statistics surprise you? The fact that the 250 film, most money-making films of 2013, only 10% had women behind the scenes, 6% directors. Did that shock you, surprise you?
It did, and it disappointed me. I mean, you would think that in 2014 we would have come a long way, but Hollywood is still run by white men in suits who are making decision makers. They're looking at, the money that these films bring in, and very seldom is there that one or that will just take that chance. But it was very disappointing. But also, too, on the other flip side, it's like, all right, well, just got to roll up our sleeves a little bit more and do some more work.
And my final question is, where do you feel an up-and-coming female filmmaker can get support at this stage?
That's a good question. I think really it's important about just building the community around you. I've been really blessed with, I went to NYU grad film school, and from there I was able to really surround myself with other filmmakers, African American, who at that time, there weren't many of us there. We just kind of bonded together and gelled. And just moving forward, we've been each other's support. So I think it's really important to have that foundation of just having someone maybe who's a writer, someone who's a shooter, someone who is an actor who can really just vouch for you, someone who can encourage you, and you can do the same, and just building on that community because you're going to need it.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm glad you're out there.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We will be right back here on Arise on Screen.
I wanted to make something sacred.
Coming up, it's been called the greatest movie never made. 70s cult director Alejandro Jodorowsky wanted to make Dune the most groundbreaking sci-fi film ever, but it never made it to the big screen. The new inspirational documentary, Jodorowskys Dune, tells us why. And the Muppets have a new movie where the gang goes on a global tour in Muppets Most Wanted.
Put the frog down.
I'm Mike Sargent with Arise on Screen, and this is Women's History Month. Julie Dash is an American filmmaker, author, and member of the LA Rebellion. Her Daughters of the Dust from 1992 was the first full-length film by an African-American woman with general theatrical release in the United States. More from Arise on Screen coming up.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
From Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
The first thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Mi ambición con Dune fue tremenda. Y entonces lo que yo quise es crear un profeta. I want to create a prophet to change the young mind of all the world. For me, Dune will be the coming of a god, artistical, cinematographical god.
In 1974, cult film director Alejandro Jodorowsky attempted a big screen adaptation of Frank Herbert's seminal science fiction novel Dune. While the ambitious production never made it to screen, Jodorowsky's team of a then relatively unknown concept artist ended up changing modern science fiction film forever. Hi, I'm Mike Sargent, and this is Arise on Screen. With me in the studio are film critics Chiara Spagnoli Gabardi and Stephanie Green. Now, Stephanie, this film I think left you a little bit cold. This is my wheelhouse, so I loved it. I would see this over and over again.
Yeah.
It didn't inspire you, it didn't move you, you'd never heard about it, but you didn't care.
I had heard of Dune, but I didn't care. And when I watched, I saw his passion, how he loved what he was doing, how he loved the film, how he had a vision. I thought that was inspiring, but the film itself, no.
No. Now,
not at all.
Chiara, you're more with me, because I found his persistence of vision and what he did and what he wanted to do with this film very, very inspiring.
Yes, I found it very much as well. And I must say, leaving the theater, I had this bittersweet sensation running through me, because you see how he tackles with a major failure. You see what his life would have been, what the history of film would have been, because if this had been released before Star Wars, it would have most certainly changed the entire game of science fiction at the movies. Because as we see through the film, it somehow has influenced the films dealing with science fiction.
Oh, it more than definitely has, because all the artists in there, Giger, Chris Foss, a number of those are Mobius, they were all eventually become very influential to science fiction film. And I think you're right. I think that this film, if it had come out, it would have changed, and had made money, let's just say, it would have changed then the concept of what you needed to do, as opposed to all the shooting of spaceships in space that we saw for 15, 20 years after Star Wars. We would have had things that were had more depth and more powerful.
You see, here I found there was much more philosophy to it, and I think Jodorowsky was much ahead of his time. The Majors was scared of such a project. If he had had the money on his own and had managed to make it, things would have been different. But sometimes you have to be audacious to try and do something different.
I agree. And Stephanie, you said, so his passion is the only thing that really moved you for this.
Yeah, I mean, every person that he went after, from the artist to Orson Welles, he knew, he felt the spirit or the energy of them, and he went behind them and did what he had to do to get them.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on. Our final film is Muppets Most Wanted. In this movie, the Muppets go on a global tour, playing in some of Europe's most exciting destinations. But of course, mayhem follows as they find themselves unwittingly entangled in an international crime caper.
International tour manager.
Dominic, bad guy?
It's pronounced bad G. It's French.
I was bad guy from Little Tadpole.
Yeah.
And
you were a bad tadpole, weren't you?
I was a very bad tadpole. I was always getting into trouble.
As soon as you got your legs.
Yes.
You were away, weren't you?
I was up and out. I got out of there. I got out of that pond.
He was born in a Russian pond.
Listen up. You're hot. But what is inevitable about a moment?
For you, Chiara,
ends.
you were a Muppets fan, so this movie, you thought it was as good as the last one?
I thought it was even better. I thought, you know, it kept the true spirit of the Muppets alive. I love the musical numbers. I was laughing so much. And I thought there were also some very interesting references to old films that were handled in a very ironic way. I loved the Seventh Seal little clip at one point by Ingmar Bergman. So I thought it was very, very amusing.
Well, I thought it was fun, but I was a little distracted by the voices, but not you, Stephanie. You thought that the voices were perfect and worked well.
The voices were fine. They worked well with me, and I love the way they brought in different celebrities, singers, artists, whatever, to make the story go along. So it was good.
Now, this formula is very old. You know, they've been doing what they do for over 35 years. And you felt, Stephanie, that it worked. You feel
I did.
It's not stale. It's just as good as ever.
Exactly.
And you, Chiara, you felt the same way.
Yes, I thought, you know, the characters hadn't been warped. Their true nature was still there, and it was very ironic. It wasn't trying to do something that had already been done, and it didn't switch to different parts, so it was very funny.
Well, I liked it too. I liked especially what they did with Kermit, someone playing him and him under disguise. And I really enjoyed Tina Fey in this. I thought
Tina Fey was amazing.
She was probably the most fun.
Hilarious.
She kept the accent going. She was amazing.
And her being secretly in love with Kermit. I like that too. Yeah. So I'm very, very glad that we've gotten to do this, and it being Women's Month, and I have two lovely ladies here to interview with me. And we will be back next week to talk more movies here on Arise on Screen.